In what is being considered one of the most cringe-worthy stunts yet, Stephen Colbert yet again shills for the far left and once again embarrasses himself in front of the entire world. In this video, we're going to take a look at the near universal mockery of Colbert's so-called vaccine dance. We're going to see how it's just par for the course in the collapse of leftist comedy in the age of Trump. And stick with me to the very end of this video, where I'm going to show why all of this is nothing less than an admission that the left is utterly panicked that the MAGA movement is unstoppable. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Patriots all across the globe. Dr. Stevie with you. Great to be with you as always. I am your daily fake news antidote, offering patriotic analysis to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we jump into things here, as you know, I have the absolute honor of sharing the stage with the one and only Donald Trump Jr. on October 8th and 9th in Jacksonville, Florida. I am so thrilled to be partnering with the American Freedom Tour and speaking alongside Kayleigh McEnany and Dinesh D'Souza and Dan Bongino and many more patriots you know and love. And guess what? For those of you who have already clicked on that link below to register, we are drawing 5 winners this weekend who are going to have dinner with me and my team in Jacksonville. It is going to be so cool. We're going to announce those winners on Monday. So if you have not clicked on that link below to register, you're literally got hours to be entered into this drawing. So don't wait. Click on that link below. Join me for dinner and for a weekend you'll never forget with patriots all across the country in Jacksonville. I can't wait to see you there. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. A recent retweet by John Miller of the late night television host Stephen Colbert's so-called vaccine dance has lit up Twitter this week. As I understand it, the stunt actually took place on Colbert's program a few months back when he returned to his studio with a fully vaccinated audience. But somehow it flew under the radar screen. That is until Miller retweeted it with a sarcastic caption, "How could Colbert lose to Gutfeld in the ratings with an act like this?" It was clear from the tweet and from endless jeers on Twitter that Colbert humiliated himself in front of the entire nation. The stunt was almost universally denounced as utterly cringeworthy. And all this, for me, it brings back memories of other absurd attempts by comedians to shill for the far left, like when Kathy Griffin a couple of years back, do you remember that, when she was featured in a brief video and photo shoot of herself holding up in ISIS-like fashion a bloody mock-up of President Trump's severed head? You remember that? It was so horrific. The photo shoot, which she originally described simply as artsy-fartsy, you know, it's an artsy-fartsy statement. It received immediate denunciation, even from liberal circles, however reluctantly. Most faulted Griffin even back then for just being little more than a D-list comedian who's just looking for attention, trying to remind everybody she still existed. Or just think of, you know, the absurd things that have been coming out of Jim Carrey's mouth of late. It's patently clear that comedy, leftist comedy, has taken a horrific toll in the age of Trump. And I've been trying to figure out why that is. Why are leftist comedians in particular reduced to such absurdities of late? And I came across a fascinating article written by a far leftist, interestingly enough. It's actually a series of articles by a far leftist who makes, I think, a very compelling argument that this kind of milquetoast mockery and cringeworthy attempts at ridicule that we're seeing from the likes, particularly Colbert and Kimmel and other leftist clowns, it's all actually an admission. You need to let that hit you. These sorry excuses for comedy are actually a collective admission. They're admissions that the woke left is absolutely panicked. They are, in reality, terrified. They're terrified and they feel utterly hopeless and helpless, and what they see is the unstoppable rise of the age of Trump. Again, gang, this is coming from a leftist commentator. This leftist commentator argues that this kind of absurdity that we most recently saw on display with Colbert is actually rooted in a sense of impotence and overall despair among leftists who are trying to come to terms with the fact that Trump and the MAGA movement are ultimately unstoppable. And I wanted to share this with you because I think it helps us understand why the left, and particularly Colbert, have become so utterly cringeworthy of late. It's not just that they're incompetent when it comes to entertainment or that they have bad taste. I mean, and to be totally fair here, Colbert is a very talented guy, or at least he was before the age of Trump. But what I find so interesting from this leftist commentator is this insight into why Colbert and others on the left are increasingly falling into such radical absurdities and clearly losing any semblance of real comic creativity. Here's what this leftist commentator writes, quote, "In response to the rise of the age of Trump, many liberals have retreated to a fantasy world in which Trump and other members of his regime will somehow be punished for their crimes against the country. Those most desperate for justice and a return to normalcy have even convinced themselves that Trump will be tried, convicted, and sent to prison, an outcome that almost absolute certainty will not happen. Others choose to laugh at Trump and his followers as though mockery will somehow stop ascendant fascism and prevent the imminent demise of America's multiracial democracy." So there's the setup here, and you can clearly see this guy's a bona fide leftist and his dropping of the F-bomb, right, the fascist label and all. But notice what he says to all this. Quote, "In an effort to better understand the power of denial and fantasy in this moment, I recently spoke with Dr. Justin Frank, a former clinical professor of psychiatry at George Washington University Medical Center and a physician with more than 40 years of experience in psychoanalysis. In our most recent conversation, Dr. Frank explains how and why people may engage in behaviors such as inappropriate humor, denial, childlike thinking, and other unhealthy reactions as a way of managing anxiety and fear about Trumpism. He also warns that such behavior risks creating a state of passivity and inaction among members of the supposed resistance and may minimize the real danger that Trump and his movement represent to the country and world." And here's what the psychiatrist says. Now, again, the context here is that this is dealing with leftists trying to manage their anxiety about Trump. But I would argue, as does this leftist commentator, that this is just as applicable to what we're calling here the age of Trump. His policies, the rise of the MAGA movement, his supporters, anti-vaxxers, you name it. Here's what the psychiatrist said about humor attempts like Colbert's. Quote, "It is unhealthy humor. The humor you were describing is defensive in nature. It's defending against anxiety and fear. Specifically, it's a defensive use of contempt. Through it, people can demean and insult Donald Trump, which in turn means they don't have to be afraid of him. And one of the ways a person can express contempt is through laughter. Thus, it's a denial of one's vulnerability, because contempt means the other person is harmless. Therefore, he or she cannot hurt you. In that way, Trump is made into a pathetic fool. If I laugh, it's not going to hurt me." And there you have it. All of these cringeworthy attempts at humor are all just public defensive mechanisms. And by the way, that describes Colbert's audience as well, with them laughing and clapping and some dancing along with Colbert. According to the psychiatrist, it's all an attempt at defending themselves against a very real sense of anxiety and fear. Or as he calls it, it's a defensive use of contempt. If I laugh at someone, that tells me I have nothing to fear from this person. It's a very, very interesting explanation for precisely why the left and their attempts at being funny have become so embarrassingly and shockingly humorless of late. Now, as you know, I've documented on this channel countless times all the various ways in which the left admits its panic. Again, like with this stunt from Colbert, it can be hard to see, but ironically, with explanations actually coming from other leftists, we can see that the embarrassing stunts are themselves the admission of panic. Colbert knows that the age of Trump is winning. He knows it, and he knows he can't do anything about it. So all that means that we can expect that his attempts at comedy will continue to decline, with the most cringeworthy stunts, unfortunately, yet to come. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video on the Arizona audit, where I show you how leftists are indeed panicking over how the audit is indeed changing the world. Changing our nation, I should say. You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.